I'm Nick Hughes, and this is Founders Live Conversations.
Bryan Copley, welcome to Founders Live Conversations.
Nick Hughes, thank you for having me.
Bryan, you're the CEO of Citybldr. Thank you for joining me, man. By the way,
awesome to be here.
We've had so many off-camera conversations, especially over beers, and incredibly just engaging and educational on both sides, right? But we got you in front of the camera now. This is amazing. But I want to take a step back a second. We're going to touch on Citybldr. We're going to touch on your experience as a founder. But let's go back to, man, where did you grow up? How did you get here? What did you study? And what was like your early career?
Machine.
Wayback Machine.
Born in Mountlake Terrace, a little suburb of Seattle. Single mom, a younger brother and sister. Didn't have a lot of money. Story goes, mom said, you can keep going to this private school, but I can't afford it. The only way you can do it is sell some candy bars. So I don't know if you ever had those candy bar sales when you were a kid.
Yeah.
You go to the store, you'd hawk candy bars for a week or two, and then you'd all get to go on a field trip. I did that for 3 years.
Seriously?
Sold candy bars for 3 years to go to a little school called Cornerstone Christian School.
This is amazing. What did you learn? We're going to kind of intersperse these experiences. What did you learn from that, man?
I learned education is valuable. I learned that a good education is not free. I learned that you have to work for things that you really care about, and in some cases, you have to work before you're at a legal age to be able to earn an income. But that happens all over the world, right?
Yeah.
In the United States, we tell kids you can't really have a job until you're 14. Kids work all over the world, and we're pretty fortunate that we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But in most places, if you look at the majority of the world's population, kids are working.
Yeah.
So I learned how to work hard. One of the really cool things I learned was just how to read people. So someone would walk out with their groceries at a Safeway, and if they had both their arms full, I knew there was like a really thin chance that they were going to buy a candy bar from me because they'd have to fish around, find a buck out of their pocket, which I don't know if you remember, but this is 1986.
Yeah.
Candy bars were $6 for $1.
It's crazy.
$5 for $1. So if you could get $1 for a candy bar, I mean, you were swimming in it. There's a lot of margin there. I don't think I knew that word at that time, but I knew that if we could sell a lot of candy bars, I could keep going to this school. So did that till second grade. We moved up north, got into a little bit bigger place. I think I would have called it a backyard home or whatever. It was my aunt's house. We had our own little backyard area. Really, it's an ADU. So we kind of lived in a mother-in-law, but we lived in Mukilteo, went to a school called Voyager up there. And then mom decided that we were going to go out and get a house, which was a really big step for us. We moved a lot. So went out to Lake Stevens, went to Lake Stevens High School, played football and acted, I think, once with Chris Pratt.
Seriously?
Yeah. Chris is a great guy.
That's awesome.
Super cool guy, really funny. It's not just on TV, he's that way in real life.
Back at the time, did you think that, okay, this guy's going to be in Hollywood, or was it just he was a fun guy and he was like,
you know
cool?
What's funny is there were two brilliant actors at our school. I would say he was one of them. There was another guy named Aaron, and Aaron's one of the funniest people I've ever seen in my life. I think he's still actually creating short skits and comedies for YouTube. But yeah, I mean, I could have guessed either one of those guys were going to go on, but Chris is just super easygoing. One of the stories I remember about Chris Pratt was we were in an assembly, and he was selected. I think he was a year or two older than me, and I was selected as a freshman. And the skit was I had to walk into the room, and I had to be the nerd, which wasn't very far from the truth, right? They cast me correctly. I had my backpack on, I'm coming in, and he had to come in with his wrestler's singlet on.
No way.
Like all buff. And he had to pick me up and then just shake me around. He's supposed to bear hug me and shake me around. Well, so the assembly starts, there's 2,000 kids in this auditorium or gymnasium, and spotlight goes on. I come in with my nerdy little backpack on, and he picks me up, but instead of bear hugging me, he actually lifted me over his head and spun me around. And everybody just went nuts. They just stood up and started clapping, and I thought the guy was going to drop me, and I was like, if he drops me, it's going to be the most embarrassing moment of my life, even though it probably still was pretty bad that this guy picked me up.
I love this story, man. I haven't heard it, but this is amazing.
I don't know, 15 years later, Chris Pratt's tweeting about, hey, what was your most embarrassing high school moment? And I tweeted that at him, and he was like, oh man, I'm really sorry about that. Super nice guy.
God, that's awesome. All right, so you went to school here locally in Seattle.
Yep.
Then
Before I graduated high school, I got a job at a software company cleaning the shitters. So my job was to come in and make sure that garbages were emptied, that dishes were clean, and that toilets and bathrooms were all scrubbed. Yeah. I did that for a while, and my mom drove me there. I wasn't old enough to drive yet. And sometimes I'd finish a little early, and I'd mess around with the software. So my aunt worked there, which is how my mom got the job cleaning the place. And I messed around with the software and screwed some stuff up and kind of felt bad, kind of hard booted, turned off the computer.
Control-Alt-Delete.
Exactly. I was like, hey, I got to unplug this thing out of the wall. They're going to find out I was messing with stuff. They did find out I messed with stuff and ended up being a software tester there for 3 years.
Wow.
So that was my first experience in software testing. It was just an accident. And if you look over my life, I've been super fortunate that way. I've had a lot of happy accidents that have helped me get to this point.
Right. So let's fast forward a little bit and let's talk about Citybldr, which I want you to go back to the beginning. It was not called Citybldr. It's when we met. How did you come into this concept of housing, residential housing and data and all this really cool stuff?
Yeah, 14 years ago, I was in Phoenix with my best friend's dad. This guy, Rick McCon, was in Phoenix doing really well in real estate. I knew he had probably 100 properties all over the place. And I was working a day job, 5 a.m. till 2, and he said, hey, you should come over to my office sometime and I'll show you some things. And I was kind of wasting away. I was going down to the pool and I was lifting weights, and I knew I really wasn't challenging myself. And I knew that this was a guy that a lot of people looked up to, and he was someone I'd always looked up to growing up, known him for 10 years. So I came down to his office. He goes, step outside. We walk outside. He said, show me all the houses for sale. So like anyone else, I pointed to 3 yard signs. He said, wrong. Every house on this street is for sale.
Every home.
Every home. So fast forward 12 years, I started a company called Every Home based on what I learned in that year that I apprenticed for the guy. He never paid me $1. I don't know that he even ever took me out to a meal. He was super, super frugal, but he taught me things that were worth, who knows, millions.
Right. And can you name 1 or 2 on the top of your head, the principles and the values that he taught you that you apply now as a founder of your company?
Yeah, data arbitrage. We walked into his office after he showed me that every home is for sale. He showed me stacks of papers. And he said, this one, zoning. This one, recorder information. This one, tax assessor information. This is schools. This is environmental areas. And he just showed me all these data sets, and they were just stacked up like this. Then he handed me a highlighter, and he said, this is what you're looking for. So I just go through it, highlight.
Literally on the piece of paper?
On the piece of paper. So it's 2 p.m. At 8 p.m., 9 p.m., we get done with these. I come back the next day, Monday, same thing. Same thing. On Friday, we'd have whittled down thousands of these properties down to maybe 30. Then we go online to mapquest.com, if you remember that, and we'd chart out a path of where we were going to drive in Phoenix to go knock on the doors of these property owners who were probably home on Saturday, and Saturday was the big day. Saturday was the day I loved because it reminded me of being 6 and telling people, do you want to buy a candy bar? It was like, hey, your property is valuable, and we'd like to make you an offer on it. And we'd whittled down thousands to 30, and we hoped to get 1. Our goal was to get 1 and to make, I think it was $41,000, $42,000 per home. Well, we did this enough times that I realized this guy's making as much in a month as I'm making in a year. And he's taught me all of these things. But the one thing that killed me about that was, remember, I'd already worked at a software company for 3 years prior to that. And I knew that the work that we were doing to find data arbitrage or arbitrage in these properties could be done in an afternoon by computer software, and we would have the rest of the week to go out and do deals.
So did you start the process of writing that program and writing?
No,
that
I started the process of doing that when I was 23 years old in my head. I said, I might have been 24 at that point because I was there for a year. I said, I'm going to automate everything that I learned, and we're going to do this across the country. And it took me 5 companies to launch that company and many years.
Yeah.
And a very, very windy road to get there.
The funny thing is I get that because Founders Live is just a manifestation of probably 6 to 8 years of what I've been doing. And I think we share the same path is, you kind of start this direction and you see there's some things here that are sticking, but a lot of things don't. Then you take another form of that, do this, some things stick, some things don't. But you've stuck with it for so long that I think you found the model and the insights that were required to create like a very successful company, which is, let's go there. So the evolution into Citybldr.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? And
that was another happy mistake.
Right. And what is Citybldr? Let's go there for a second.
Sure. So Citybldr is a place where property owners can find out what a builder or developer would pay for their property. They come to the site, they sign up, they get that value, which oftentimes is very different than what Redfin or Zillow or their local real estate agent would tell them. And then we have builders and developers on the other side of the market that are interested in buying those types of properties. So if you live in Seattle, you know what that looks like when you're walking down the street and you see a really tall building and then you see the up home, or you see something that just doesn't seem to make sense in that neighborhood that's changing or gentrifying. But even if you live outside of Seattle and you don't have 40, 50 cranes scattered all over your city, you've walked down a street before and you've had that sense that this neighborhood's changing, and I'll bet a real estate developer is going to buy that lot. It's funny because you don't even have to be a real estate person. You could be a kid. I have 3 kids. My kids do this. They're like, that's a Citybldr house, or that's a Citybldr lot. And they get it because the heuristics so easy.
Yeah.
You know that something's out of place and the neighborhood's changing.
Right. And so your customers are?
Our customers are property owners.
Okay.
So we started off thinking that let me tell you how we got to where we are, but we started off believing that our customers were homeowners. And then we learned that they could be small business owners. Then we were surprised, and a big bank, largest bank in the world, claimed a $150 million property on our platform, and we instantly valued it at $147 million.
Wow.
So then we learned that our customers could be really anybody who owns land.
Mm-hmm.
But our focus right now, and this is key, if entrepreneurs or founders hear me say anything on this whole interview, it's that there's a lot of things you can do, but you need to be the best at one thing.
God,
you need to focus.
I am so glad you said that, and let's dive deeper on that. Because I see the biggest mistake, again, if you're a founder listening to what we're saying, the biggest mistake that I see with a lot of rookie founders, and sometimes even ones that are more seasoned, is they chase all these ideas. Their pitch deck is full of like XYZ, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And what they haven't done is nailed one thing best in the world. Because that's what people do, is people pay for the best in the world, and once you can repeat that, that thing scales. So let's talk about how
you can take over the Axis forces, but you've got to establish a beachhead, right?
Exactly.
You've got to make landfall first.
Yeah.
Because if you decide that you're just going to take over all of Europe, it's not going to happen.
No.
You've got to establish that beachhead, because if you're doing anything that I would call a startup and not a small business, you're going after a large market opportunity that is highly inefficient, where there are big lumbering incumbents that don't want you to succeed.
Right.
And you've got to be very focused about how you're going to make landfall. So that's why they call it a beachhead. You've got to establish a beachhead. And I'm sitting here talking about how you have to do this. As I'm hearing myself say it, it's like, man, every single day I have to tell myself, focus on the one thing that matters. So for us, we establish a metric, which is gross listed value, which is the sum value of all the products that we have listed on the market available to be purchased by builders and developers. And that's how we establish if we're doing well or not. So our goal by the end of the year is to have $396 million in gross listed value.
Not 400?
Not 400. No, we couldn't get there. It just the model didn't work out. But I think that's key. I was meeting with a great founder in town here, Liz Pierce. She ran Liquid Planner, and she's helping me out in thinking about metrics. And we were talking yesterday, and she said, I really think in your leadership meeting, you guys should tie every single thing that you're talking about to this North Star metric. I thought that was really good advice.
Yeah.
When you have a North Star metric and everyone in the company knows what it is, and everyone's talking about what they're doing and how interesting it is, you can always say, but how does that tie into that North Star metric? Is it moving that metric, and can you show us how? I think that's a really smart way to think.
It is amazing. Great advice, Liz.
Yeah.
I've actually interviewed her, not on this show, but in person in front of a crowd. She's very wise.
She's stellar.
Yeah. Okay, so we've kind of talked about where you've come to, but what is the future of Citybldr? Obviously, there's some big data plays going on here.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
If you don't mind, before I answer that, I glanced over one of the questions you asked, which is how we got to Citybldr.
Okay,
so
let's go there.
I think it's important to note, because this is an important part of our story, we didn't intend to build Citybldr. Citybldr was a result of getting some signal and some noise when we launched Everyhome. So the idea behind Everyhome was we were taking this concept that I learned 13, 14 years ago, that every home is for sale.
Yeah.
And we were literally putting a for sale sign on every home in the United States. Just saying, hey, go bid on it.
Right.
If you want the house, go online, bid on that thing. We'll send a piece of mail over to that property owner. If they're interested, they'll get back to you. When we went into analytics about a month in, we figured mom and pop home buyer, the people that are desperately seeking houses that they can move into, would be our core user, our power users. We were wrong. What we were surprised by was 83% of our power users were investors, builders, developers, real estate investment trusts, private equity, hedge funds, contractors, brokers, architects, engineers, all these commercial real estate folks.
Everyone but mom and pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was commercial real estate. And so I was meeting with a friend, Eric Jansen in Boston, running his 8th company right now on the Harvard campus, super sharp guy. He's been kind of something of a mentor to me over the years. And I said, Eric, look at this. And he said, there's some signal there. It's not what you expected, but the data is telling you something. What's it telling you? And I called my co-founder and I said, can we run a machine learning algorithm? And mind you, I'm not technical, so I'm really stretching when I asked him this 2 years ago. Can we run a machine learning algorithm to find out what's happening here? Can we find out what the similarities are between our power users and predict what they're trying to do or what they're doing with our product? And he said, well, I think we can do something similar to what you're thinking. And what we did was we ran an algorithm that determined that it was investors, builders, and developers, and they're going after off-market properties looking for arbitrage. Wow. And what they told us when we sat down in interviews with them was that 90% of the properties they purchased were off-market because they knew something about the value of those properties that the market didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And what we learned was there's 2 correct ways to value every property in the world: the way it's being used now and the way it could be used. And the terminology for the way it could be used in the industry is highest and best use valuation. You're saying, what can I do with that dirt? Sure, there's a house there now, or there's a gas station there now, or it's a park, or hopefully not a park, right? Let's leave the park. Yeah. But there's something there now. What can we do with it?
Right.
And so what we've done is we've standardized all of the zoning information so that you can think of what we built as like a Rosetta Stone for zoning.
Yeah.
So there's 3,164 U.S. counties, 255 zone types. Those zone types have really weird nomenclature or symbols. None of them are standardized, normalized, right. And they basically, a lot of them mean the same things. Like MR 130 could mean the same thing as C 130 or B in another place. And you have no idea until you run an algorithm, that says, those all mean you can build apartments.
Wow.
Those all mean you can do office space or
right.
retail or...
So I want to point something out, which I also observed, as we've known each other, is the like wisdom in pivoting. And I wouldn't even use the word that you pivoted. I think it's more like you evolved from the insights and knowledge as a company.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because pivot's a dirty word nowadays, right?
Right. And
I feel like, hey, for a while there, we pivoted like a country line dancer, but
Mm-hmm.
We did find signal. We did find people who were getting a lot of
And
value.
that's what I want to point out is you were listening. I think another big mistake I see a lot of founders make is they pivot way too far and like to just another idea they might have read on Reddit or TechCrunch or whatever, and you saw the signal, you followed that, and with insight, you then realized there's a lot bigger opportunity here. And I think you had enough strength to do that versus, either stick with your idea. You're too in love with the idea. That's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
You are pivoting too frequently and too fast in no direction whatsoever. That's a huge mistake.
Yep.
You guys saw the signal. So I guess one more in-depth question on, yes, you met with that advisor. He kind of helped you see that, but like, in what way did you say this is the signal we're going to follow?
Awesome question, and I'm going to give you advice I got from another great entrepreneur. Do you know Ash Bhupathy?
Meeting with him on Monday.
Awesome.
Ash is a great friend.
Ash is an awesome guy, and for those who don't know Ash, he was an entrepreneur in residence at Sequoia. Great organization, great brand, big VC down in the Bay Area. Ash told me about 3 years ago, he said, this is how you know when you've found a great product and a great customer and a great solution. Make one person happy.
Yeah.
Then make 10 people happy. And if you can make 10 people happy, you can make 100 people happy.
Yep.
If you can make 100 people happy, you're done. You did it.
That's such good advice.
I thought that was so simple and so succinct and actionable, but at the same time, making 10 people happy is not easy.
Mm-mm.
It's not. And if you've done it, all you have to find now is a similarity between those people and say, that's my persona, that's my core customer.
Right. So you used that as you looked at your data and you found the signal and you said, wow, these people are actually happy, they're using it, and you followed that and then you built around that. So let's talk about that for a second.
We started with a few builders and developers, asking them why they loved this product. They told us similar things. Then we built it up to 10, told us similar things, went to 40, went to 80, got to 160 is where we stopped. And at 160, we found they all liked the same things, but there was one thing that really stunk at that point for us, which was they didn't want to pay us. Not what we thought we should get paid. It's a problem, right? So we were talking to builders and developers who I like to call light blue collar. They're working in a white collar industry, right? Building these huge skyscrapers and other buildings all over the city. But these guys are using hammers. A lot of them came from the construction industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so very blue collar roots. So we like to think of them as light blue collar. And we're talking to them about using software to do what they do now. And the process they use now, I like to call the knock, talk, stalk, and walk. So
we got to break that down. What is that?
Yeah, they just go around the neighborhood and they're like, hey, that looks like a good site, the same way we do it now, right?
Yeah.
And then they kind of pencil it out and they write some things down, back of the envelope calculations. Then they go and knock up to the front door, talk to the homeowner, stalk the homeowner until the homeowner's ready to sell, walk around your neighborhood. You'll see them all over the country doing the same thing.
Wow.
That is the state of the art right now for finding great development sites. And we thought, that can't be the best.
No.
It's happening that way all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name any big brands, but we talked to one of the biggest real estate brands in Seattle, found out that the way that they build even really big sites or assemblages where they package multiple parcels together to build a big site, to put up like an apartment or mixed-use development, build relationships, knocking around the neighborhood, getting to know the kids' names, the dogs' names. That's how it's done.
Wow.
And we thought, there's got to be a little bit more efficient way to do that. So we had this big group of people that loved our product but didn't want to pay us a lot of money, typically didn't use software for anything besides maybe tracking some processes, right? We looked at total addressable market size, which is a very logical thing to do. Definitely find out who's paying what, because if there's no budget, it doesn't matter how great your product is. If people aren't spending money on it, it's unlikely it's going to just come from nothing.
Agreed.
And what we learned was this one builder really helped us out. He said, Bryan, you want us to pay $2,000 a month for this software, which seems like a lot of money. But on the flip side, you're telling us it's going to save us $100,000 in brokerage fees because that's what we pay a broker. to go out and find that site. If you're so confident this stuff works, why don't you just go find the site? We'll pay you $100,000. We took his advice. So we decided that we'd pivot, and now per deal, our range is $20,000 to $250,000 per paycheck per closed deal. So we get paid like any other broker,
Right.
but we're typically working on $1 million deals. Biggest deal we have marketed right now is an $8 million deal, and that's a great story. That story was that we determined that there's another use or another value for every home, right, and every parcel. But what we learned was we met with a really big developer here in town, Vulcan, Paul Allen's company. And we showed them this product. This must have been a year and a half ago. And we said, check this out. Isn't this awesome? You can find great development sites. And the woman we met with said, this is great if you're looking for that size parcel. But we need really big parcels. And I ran the numbers through our data real quick. There were 83 parcels that met the criteria that they were looking for. They know every single one of those property owners.
Right.
They probably got a relationship with them. And they said, if one of those 83 doesn't want to sell to us or whatever the number was, they said, we've got to assemble lots, or we've got to piece together all these different parcels. And the woman said, and that'll just not be something that software can ever do. So we took that as a challenge. My co-founder, Devin, went into a hole for about 5 months, came out, and he showed me this software, and he said, check this out. And what he showed me was all of the best groups of properties that could be cobbled together to capture the biggest premium. So we decided to go to market with that. The market was pretty excited about it. We told people that you can sell your homes or your properties together for a lot more than you can sell them on their own. And we've got 8 homeowners. I think Zillow says the sum value of their homes is $3.8 million. It's across the street from the light rail station going in Shoreline. We'll probably end up getting those homeowners $8 to $8.5 million.
Wow.
That is double
Right.
what they thought their homes were worth the day before they found out about Citybldr.
That's awesome.
So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And what's really exciting about that, even bigger than those 8 people's stories, because those are going to be great stories, 270 apartments will go where those 8 homes are. That's a sum 262 more houses in Seattle. All the people that move in there won't need cars because they're all a maximum. We've measured it of 400 feet from the light rail station, so they can walk across the street, go to work, be downtown Seattle in 15 minutes. I don't like sitting in traffic. I don't know about you.
So I see the future, at least an application of the future of what you're doing, is as cities continue to get more dense, as literally lots and square footage is so valuable, and maybe the building of vertical, I see this being applied to just the intelligence of how cities grow, where things are built, why they're built, who ends up moving there. What you just said was actually the people that the 170 apartments, that's housing 170 people, if not, do the math, maybe 300-400. So in a way, your product is actually intelligently forming cities, Citybldr, and helping house people in a efficient way, hopefully cost effective, hopefully not too expensive. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you're doing.
100%.
Yeah.
McKinsey says 60% of the U.S. will live in the urban core by 2030. That's 12 years. So what we're talking about is a mass migration. That's the last time you saw a migration like this was the 20s, the roaring 20s. And the 2 largest demographics in the country are leading that, the baby boomers and the millennials. So I hate to say it, millennials, but you're doing the exact same thing the baby boomers are doing.
So we don't have a lot of time left. I do want to get to this, though. You've raised money recently. From your experience, what advice do you give to founders that come to you and say, man, I'm trying to raise a round of funding? Maybe it's a seed round or a Series A. Just quick kind of 1 or 2 things that you think would apply to most founders in the fundraising process.
So I'd start with team, market, product, traction, timing. Those are the 5 things that an investor at any level is going to look at when they're evaluating your company. So grade yourself honestly and have other people grade you on those 5 things. Sell your strengths, improve your weaknesses. Number 2, save up as much money as you can if you're the first person in your company before you decide to go all in, and then really go all in. Don't have an outside job. Actually go all in. Find a co-founder. Don't try to go it alone. It's hard enough.
Yeah.
And you're not a designer, a developer, and a business founder. You're not all three of those things.
Yeah, you're one.
If you are, great. If you're Mark Zuckerberg, cool. But I think it makes a lot of sense to have people that focus on business, tech, and product.
Right.
I like to think of a strong startup as being kind of a pyramid, but those
Me
three
too, me
things.
too. And in terms of finding, like your team has grown recently, and so like obviously if you have some capital, it's easier to hire. But how did you attract talent initially when you were like very early, maybe not a lot of capital? How did you attract the co-founders or the early team?
Hackathons. So the hardest thing for a business founder to find is a technical co-founder. And I'm giving away my best secret here. I've told a few people this in private, but never in front of a camera. The best place to find a technical co-founder is at a hackathon. So you go there, you find people who are really interested in solving problems. They're used to working in a compressed time frame because hackathons are usually 2 days. They're used to having to articulate what the value of their product is because by the end of it, you have to pitch it and try to win a contest. They're used to working with groups of people they've maybe not been familiar with because they just throw these people into a hopper and they form teams and naturally create products in 2 days. So I think hackathons are great places to find startup talent as a founding nucleus. As you grow, if you get to the point where you've got team, market, product, traction, timing, you're raising some money from friends and family, which is the first place you should go. People say don't raise from family. I don't know. That's a personal decision people have to make. But I got my first investment from friends and family. Went to angels that I built relationships with in the community after that. Those people founded us for a while. We got to a point where we'd actually raised a good amount of angel money, about $1.8 million. And then we closed on our first close of VC funding in December.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a huge milestone. It was really great, and we love our VC investors. We feel like culturally they're very similar to who we are.
Yeah.
And another thing I'll tell you, for those founders who are at the point where they've raised angel money and they're going for VC money, one of the things I struggled with was looking at VCs and thinking, that's another guy just like me, or that's another gal just like me. But those are people just like you. You should evaluate them the same way they're evaluating you. You need to make sure it's a culture fit. You need to make sure that they have a similar end in mind.
I think what you're saying is you are interviewing or evaluating them equally as they are doing to you, and you be judicious on who you really want as a business partner.
It's
as
very
an
true.
investor.
It's very true. Your investors are your partners as well. They may not show up to work every single day, but if you're the kind of person I am, you're constantly thinking about how you're going to get your investors 10x of their money, 100x on their money, 1000x on their money. That's hugely important to you. I take deadly serious every dollar we get from an investor. So what I would say is when you're evaluating investors, not all money is created equal. This is a really great thing to think of at the end. One of the things I tell investors is there's two types of investors. There's a guy who sees us going by in our Pocock boat. We're in our crew race right now. And they are like, that's the winning boat. I want to get in that boat. And we pull over and we say, hey, you write us a check, you're in the boat. One guy's got the check, the other guy's got a check and an oar. Always look for the people with the check and the oar, meaning the price of admission is the investment, but then how can this person help our company succeed afterwards? And be overt about it. Ask your investors, do the Godfather and just say, at some point I'm going to ask you for a favor. And if they say, hey, that's something I want to do, great.
Yeah.
If someone says, all I want to do is write you a check and come back, I want to Rip Van Winkle and then my money comes back 10x, that's fine. If that's the money you're getting, that's cool. Yeah. But we love people who are in the boat with us.
Man. Bryan, we could sit here and talk all day, but we got to go, man. Thank you so much for being here. Cheers and see you again.
Always a pleasure, Nick.
Yep.